All right, now that everybody's had an opportunity to go ahead and get this letter name routine card out, we are going to go ahead and talk about using explicit teaching routines to increase the quality of our systematic instruction. And we are going to do that through our ECRI teaching routines. And the ECRI teaching routines are going to be broken into two parts. So our first part here is our highly focused and purposeful use of instructional language. And we're going to look at that through our teacher explanation, our teacher model, and multiple practice opportunities for students through the use of a signal. Next, we're going to look at our strategies to improve student engagement. And again, that's going to be done through immediate corrective feedback and checks for understanding, multiple opportunities for checks for understanding. So if we take a look here first at our materials, it is going to be our chart of letters to practice. And it's very easy to find because it's labeled materials right at the top of your card there. So I've got my letter name chart here written up on the board. You'll have an opportunity to pull yours out in a little bit. But that's our materials that we're going to need for this routine. Next, we're going to take a look at, again, our purposeful use of instructional language, our teacher explanation. And that's listed as explain. And as we're doing our teacher explanation, we're going to demonstrate the task, right? So we're going to be modeling that demonstration for students as we are explaining it. And here you'll notice some bolded words. The bolded words are things that you're going to be saying to your students. So let's go ahead and practice reading the bolded part together. Ready? You're going to practice saying letter names. When I point to a letter, say the letter name in your head. When I tap, say the letter name out loud. So really easy, teacher-friendly here, right? Anytime we see bolded words, those are going to be what you're saying to students. So again, if I was doing my teacher explanation and demonstrating it, you're going to practice saying letter names. When I'm pointing to the letter name, say it in your head. When I tap, say the letter name out loud. So just showing that demonstration as we're explaining to students what we're going to be doing. As we're doing our teacher explanations, the purpose here is that we are stating the objective or the goal of the lesson for students, right? We're giving them that, what are we working towards? What's our why, right? So here's our goal, here's our objective of the lesson, but we're doing that with clear and concise language for students. We are limiting the amount of teacher talk. Again, it's gonna sound like you're going to practice saying the sounds. You're going to practice blending sounds to read words. Clear and concise for students. And again, we don't do this in a way to sound like a robot or make everybody sound exactly the same, but we want to get to the meat, right? We want to get to the student practice. However, we're going to do this part because this is important too. Our teacher explanation is really important for students. We need to know our goal, but we're going to do it quickly, clear and concise, so we can begin. All right, so the next part of our instructional language is the teacher model. Again, listed as model right there on your routine card. So we're going to be using a signal for each letter, and we're going to model for students until they are successful with the routine. So let's go ahead and read the bolded part together. I'll show you how to say the letter names for the first two letters. My turn. So our fingers here, we just stated our explanation. We're moving on to our model. I'm going to show you how to do the first two. My turn. Name. C. Name. M. So I'm modeling the routine for students. We're demonstrating the task, and we're doing step-by-step demonstration, again, keeping it clear and concise. I'll show you how to do the first two, right? That's what it's going to sound like. When appropriate, we may prompt students to do the activity with us, right? Let's try this together, or do this with me. Especially in my kindergarten class in the beginning of the school year, we're building up confidence. This is a routine that we're not familiar with. So it may sound like, oh, let's do this one together. Ready? Name, T, and we'll do it together. We're building up student confidence and getting them familiar with how to do the task so that we can build up our strength, our stamina, and in order to be successful in this routine later on. But again, keeping it clear and concise for students. All right, multiple student practice opportunities. Next part is practicing for students only. So we're going to go back to the first letter on the chart. I modeled the first two I modeled the first two. We're gonna go back to the first letter to begin our student practice opportunities. And we're going to be using our signal, your turn, right? That's our signal. So I highlighted the box here. You'll see the finger pointing to it here. Signal each letter, for each letter, name. Finger to the side, pulling student focus. Where do we want our students focusing? Right here. I always tease my kindergartners that they watch my finger, so I'll wave it around and I'll watch their heads turn so I know they're ready to find their focus here. Then we're gonna give them their signal, your turn, and their cue, name. Here's our important parts that we really need to make sure that we're focusing on as we're doing our whole group instruction. 4 parts. Our focus. Where do we want students' eyes to be? Where do we want our students' attention to be? To the left of the letter in this case, right? We're having our finger weighting to the left of the letter. That's where we want student focus to be. We're not moving our finger. We're not moving our finger until we're ready to signal. So we've got our focus. Where do we want students' attention? Here. What's our cue? In this case, name. Yep, in this case, name. That's our cue. And then think time, around 2 seconds. I'll be honest, sometimes beginning in kindergarten, maybe it's closer to 3, right? Allowing students that full opportunity to really think. And then of course, our signal in this case is a tap. Yep, so focus is here. Our cue is name, think time, signal, tap, right? And so as we're doing our focus, again, we are not moving until we are ready to give them their signal. Our focus is here because everything needs to be waiting until we're ready to signal for students to talk. Our cue, we're saying it quickly, we're not droning, right? Name, name, it's quick, it's not name, name, right? Because by the 4th, 5th, or 6th name that you hear, we're going to have lost student attention, right? But it's also, we don't want to drone out words because we want students to practice speaking it quickly too. And again, that goes right back to our signal as well. We want to provide quick responses. So we give them their cue quickly, we give them their think time, allowing consistent time between each letter, in this case for the letter names, and allowing an opportunity for all students to be successful. And as we're giving our quick taps, we want it to be done quickly, a narrow window for response so that the response is quick, right? We're not droning our cues because we don't want our responses droned. If we're doing name, we're gonna get C, M, right? And we want our responses to be quickly as well, said quickly as well. So, what's our first one? Focus. And where is our focus? To the left of the letter, right? And then our second part is our cue. And what's our cue in this case? Name. And then our third part is think time, and it is often 2 seconds. And finally, our signal, and in this case, it's a tap. And I like, as I'm giving my signal, I do like it to be almost an audible tap. It just allows another opportunity for it to be a clear signal, right? I'm purposefully tapping underneath that letter for the name response, so it's very clear. I'm waiting for my response. I've signaled and I'm ready for my response. Okay, next up, we're moving on to our strategies for student engagement. So first part, immediate corrective feedback, right? What happens if in our whole group a student makes an error or multiple students make an error, right? Well, what we need to do is correct that error immediately. And so this box here with our little lightning bolt is going to be showing you your correcting student errors. Bolded again, that's when your turn to speak, right? These are things that you were saying in front of your students. So if we hear an error, we're going to immediately stop. Immediately stop when we hear or see an error. And we're going to restate the fact or answer, right? So indulge me, we'll make an error here. I made a little mark by our T. Let's make a whole group error. And I'll model for you what this is gonna look like. I've got my focus, name, 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 oh, my turn, name, T, your turn, name, T. Good. And then what we'll do, so we restated it. I said my turn, then your turn, right? Now we're going to take it out of short-term memory by going back to items. So we did my turn, T, your turn, T. Go back to name, 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 right? Allowing the opportunity to take it out of the short-term memory by presenting other practice opportunities and then repeating that practice again, right? So we took it out of short-term, but they're still getting another opportunity to practice that letter again in their routine. So in kindergarten too, especially, right? You might be doing this immediate corrective feedback quite often, right? As we're building up the stamina, as we're learning letters, as we're getting comfortable with these routines. But the more immediate that we do our corrective feedback, the faster we get it out of our short-term memory, the better it's going to become for your students, right? The confidence is going to build and they're going to be able to do this hopefully with no errors. However, if they do make an error, we've got our routine right here, right? So immediately stop, restate the fact, my turn, your turn, out of short-term memory, go back to, right? So go ahead and say that with me. We hear an error, we're going to stop, we're going to say, my turn, your turn, then we're going to go back to take it out of short-term memory. Stop, my turn, your turn, go back to get it out of short-term memory. All right, more ways to improve our student engagement. It's gonna be our checks for understanding, right? So again, labeled checks for understanding here, we are going to call on 2 or 3 students in an unpredictable order. And the purpose here is that we're going to want to make sure that we're purposeful with our students, that we're giving opportunities for our checks for understanding. And if a student does make an error on our check for understanding, we're going to go ahead and just do our regular error correction routine. So it's gonna sound like, oh, my turn, whole group response, everybody, your turn, to allow that error correction. Okay, there's some bolded area here. Could you go ahead and read this bolded section under our checks for understanding with me? Let's do some individual turns. I will touch next to a letter. Everyone will say the name of the letter in their head. I will call on one student's name and only that student will say the letter name out loud. So again, checks for understanding are going to be done at the end of the routine to see if students are mastering the content. And if they're struggling, provide immediate corrective feedback and provide more practice of the skills. So let me give you an example of how I do this letter name routine practice for individual turns in my kindergarten classroom, right? So the purpose here is that what we want to do is ensure that all students are thinking, hey, it could be me, right? It could be my chance to show Mrs. Kerr what I know. So as I'm picking, and I'm also purposeful in the letters that I'm picking for individual turns. For example, if my students made an error on T, this may be a letter that the student that I heard make an error on T, I might give them even another opportunity to practice that letter that we made an error on earlier. So I'm thinking, and I always kind of tease my kids, like, which one am I gonna pick? And I land on my letter, my first letter that I'm going to pick for my individual turns. And remember, we bring back our focus. Now all students are engaged in, oh, where did she just put her finger? Here's my focus. And again, I'm still going to give my cue to all students as well. Name. Now I'm allowing all students think time. Everybody's getting a chance to practice. Name. Jackson. Right? So everybody had the opportunity to think. Everybody was focused on the letter. The name and tap. So that Jackson gets to say our letter name, but all students had the opportunity to prep that in their head. So some things that we like to say, we're going to do our individual turns. We're going to touch next to the spelling, or in this case, the letter. Everyone's going to figure it out. When I call on one student, you're going to say that letter name, or in this case, sound out loud. We're wanting to provide focus. We're wanting to say the cue. We're wanting to give think time, and then say the one student's name to signal for them to respond. So by doing this, we're engaging all students, and it's always kind of a fun game in kindergarten too, because as we're doing that think time, they might sit up a little straighter, or they might lean in a little bit more, hoping, looking for that opportunity to show off their skills. However, we're being really deliberate and intentional with the students that we're giving these individual turns to. By doing this, we're allowing students multiple opportunities to practice. It could be a student that maybe you heard them make an error whole group. Maybe you're picking students who are in your Title I reading group or in your small grade reading group. Maybe you're picking students who are right on the cusp of bumping up to that benchmark in their Dibbles assessments, right? So what we're wanting to do is being really deliberate and intentional with our individual turns. However, this is not the opportunity where all 24 students get a chance to do an individual turn, right? We would be here all day if I let every single student have an individual turn. We're gonna limit individual turns to 2 to 3 students, right? We're going to be purposeful in who we're picking, but we're also going to make sure that we're doing it quickly and concisely so that we can continue on with our instruction. There's usually maybe a couple kids that I'm doing like a hard focus on for 3 to 4 weeks with our PLC instruction, right? This is an awesome way to do an informal quick check on those students. Where are we at in our letter name routine practice? So being really deliberate, not being random or equal in this part of our instruction. We're going to really make sure that as we're doing our individual turns, that it has a purpose. And again, really, really important, bring all students' attention to focus, cueing for all students' name, Maria. So that allows everybody the opportunity to get that practice in, even if they're not speaking out loud for their individual turn. Okay, wrapping up here with our systematic instruction, right? So we start with our phoneme blending. We're hearing the sounds in words. And as we're building upon our phoneme blending, now we're getting a little bit more complex. Now we're adding in our sound spellings. We're just adding another layer into this. And building on that again, now we're building on it to blend and read words within our sound spelling patterns. And building on it once more, right? Now we're adding reading and writing words with the sound spelling patterns as we build upon the previously taught skills, previously mastered skills. And then it goes right into now we can read and write those words. Well, now we can read the decodable texts with those sound spelling patterns. So we're building upon each part of this systematic instruction to guide students to become independent fluent readers. So building upon our previously learned skills as we go throughout the school year with our goal, right, of being fluent readers.